Well, excited to talk to you guys today. We are we enjoy talking, or I enjoy talking to folks about our program. It's a good mixture of environmental and financial aspects. So kind of depending on who we talk to is we kind of change the message, but really is it a good program to share with folks. So I'm going to start off talking about just the kind of the what is a performance contract, kind of the nationwide impact and what our industry does, and then more kind of general what in this area at least how the mechanism works. And then Caitlin's going to kind of share why they did their program, some of the benefits they see from it, and I guess some of the inner workings of what kind of the conversations they had. So generally, I'm not going to read that verbatim. You guys can kind of see how the U.S. Department of Energy defines a performance contract. But I guess generally speaking, we companies like us will use energy savings and maintenance savings to help fund other needed upgrades in buildings. And most of the time, we tell clients when I'm presenting is most of the time we're doing stuff that folks need to do anyway. And so this really becomes a financial mechanism, and this is the thing that we're good at. We're good at saving energy and maximizing energy savings in projects. And what that looks like is different from state to state, and even on a federal level, it's a little bit different. So I'll get a little bit into that in our region, how it's a little bit different. So that's when you see EPC or GEPC, a Guaranteed Energy Performance Contract. That's what that is. So Energy Services Company, ESCO, is a kind of just the name of companies like us. If you wanted more information, you could Google NAESCO is our national organization. They have lots of good resources and what they're doing on a federal level, and trying to work with to get into stimulus money to help fund these kind of projects state to state. So generally speaking, I don't know if you got this, you can see this coming through that easily, but on a national level, you can see that schools are kind of command the most market share. And again, the reason why that we typically see K through 12 schools a big part of the market for this is it becomes a financing mechanism. So in a lot of states, Missouri in particular, they have a hard debt ceiling based on their assessed valuation of a school district, and they can't borrow anymore. They can't pass any more bond issues. And if you're up against your debt ceiling, often this is a way using this mechanism that they can borrow really more than their debt capacity, and they don't have to go for a bond issue. So, for example, if they're $5 million up against their debt ceiling, they have $5 million left, and they have $10 million worth of work, they could pass a bond issue for $5 million, but then they could do $10 million worth of work if there's $5 million worth of energy savings and operational savings that companies like us can provide. So it's a great mechanism for schools. Kansas and Missouri, I'll show in the next slide, are very active in this market. The second is state and local government, and I'm sure Caitlin can kind of talk a little bit more about that, why they would pursue something like that. But really kind of the same mechanism, is that we can guarantee energy savings so it doesn't affect their overall budgets. In fact, improves their overall budgets. And there's a decent amount of federal work as well. And that's but anyway, this is kind of an overall general view of what the market looks like in the United States. I think last I'd heard, it's around a $10 billion a year industry. So I guess it's a fairly robust industry, maybe not in comparison to overall construction dollars. I don't know what that makes it, but it's fairly big and pretty well established, and a growing industry for sure. So just state by state, you can see the purple is the per capita investment dollars. Kansas and Missouri are pretty active. Kansas, because over the last 20 years, the FCIP program that David works with has been pretty active, and is a good program, and advertises and kind of advocates, maybe is a better word, advocates for this kind of process with public entities. So that's a big reason why Kansas is pretty active. Missouri it does not have a centralized state program, but it has pretty favorable legislation, so public entities can be pretty flexible on how they look at it. I've seen in Missouri folks there's criteria for how quick a project has to pay back. but it is relatively flexible, and you can use capital dollars in Missouri. So that kind of lends itself to quite a bit of work in Missouri. Nebraska is kind of catching on. I think in the last few years, there's been quite a few more projects, and as of right now, I don't know of any legislation in Iowa that enables this kind of contracting method. So in a kind of graphically, I guess, pictorially, this is kind of what we do. I put down the state statutes up there, as you can see those of the enabling legislation in Kansas, Missouri, and Nebraska. But in general, what companies like us are trying to do is we're looking for savings in a utility budget. Typically, we can save anywhere between 20% and 35% for our clients. I know we've seen a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on the building. But it's not unusual for us to see that much energy savings in public entities. And typically what we're doing is we're replacing lights, although a lot of places have already done LED lighting. But that's a big one. Building automation systems, heating and air conditioning systems, windows, roofs, those kind of things are all allowed within most state statutes. Anything really that can save energy is typically okay for us to pursue under the state statutes. Additionally, Shawnee, when we were working with them, we identified some maintenance and operational savings. I think and I don't remember the exact dollars, Caitlin, but it's somewhere around $100,000 they were spending a year maintaining their streetlights, just replacing burnt out fixtures and that kind of thing. And so with the implementation of LED lights that are under warranty actually for 10 years, there would be no cost, $100,000 a year of savings on the maintenance operations side on top of the energy savings. So that's, again, companies like us will quantify all those things, and they create the financing mechanism. And so we are not a financial or municipal advisor, so we can't make money on helping folks finance that. But typically, public entities will go out and borrow money and then we would come back, and on the backside, we would guarantee that kind of energy savings. Now, state to state, there's different language in the law that some allow capital savings. Again, in Missouri, it's a little bit more flexible. But if a public entity has $1 million earmarked for capital upgrades, they could, in theory, they could buy down that project with capital savings. So that would also kind of go into the formula of how quick the payback could be for the public entity. So in a nutshell, that's what our industry does. I'm going to pass the baton to Caitlin. She's going to talk a little bit more about how they kind of came to this idea and why.
Thanks, Ryan. So yeah, the date on this presentation is from 2018. I wanted to give you all kind of the highest level overview. This is actually the exact same presentation that we gave to our governing body on this date, April 3rd, 2018. So you can see this is a project we've been working on for a really long time. We didn't originally go down the path of performance contracting. We kind of knew about it, knew that it was an option for us. We don't, like many organizations, especially in the government realm, maintenance and preventative maintenance in particular are not something that are on our highest of priorities. Obviously, it's something that we care about, but we have a lot of priorities here, especially at the government level, the municipal government level. And so we really put a lot of our facility maintenance, especially that preventative maintenance, on the back burner for a really long time, as Ryan was just mentioning. So we kind of had a number of opportunities to come to us at kind of the exact same time that really turned out to be kind of the culmination of this program. So as Ryan was just discussing, we have a number of streetlights here in Shawnee. Maybe if you just go to the next slide, Ryan. We have 6,470 streetlights here in Shawnee, and you can see it's kind of a hodgepodge here of city-owned. And at the time, it was KCP&L and Westar, both being separate entities. They have since merged into Evergy. So if I reference KCP&L, I'm actually I just mean Evergy. It's a change for all of us. But at the time, we had a number of different hodgepodge streetlights here in our city. Who's owning them, who's operating them, who's maintaining them. They're all different types, different kinds, different colors and lumens and all of the above. And so kind of getting to the concept of who owns what, and then down even to that per dollar per street light of the maintenance, the ownership, the responsibility, et cetera. And so this was kind of the impetus, I would say, to our performance contracting conversation. If you want to go to the next slide, Ryan. We kind of did an analysis on our own to see under KCP&L, or now Evergy's ownership, how much this is costing us, not only in operation and maintenance, but just kind of our lease as well, because those that we didn't own, we did lease from them. So that was obviously an expense as well. And then if we did take over that ownership, what would that look like in the savings? And that's not even talking about converting to LED, which we're going to get to here in just a minute, but just the sole ownership of these is going to save us some money. And so going down that path of, okay, so if we buy them, how much is that going to save us? And then ultimately, once we do purchase them, how much is this LED upgrade, first of all, going to cost up front? But over the course of the bonds, which is what we ended up using to pay for these, how much is this going to save us over the long term? So when we're talking about not only that current cost of the purchase, the upgrades, but the savings over the long course, as Ryan was just discussing, those savings are going to ultimately end up paying for the upfront capital of these projects. And as you can see here, we had the very long conversation of how much we're going to purchase these streetlights for, and then how much that's going to cost to upgrade. And then the current streetlights that we also own, how much is that going to cost to upgrade as well? So if you want to go to the next slide, Ryan. Which then kind of brought us into the performance contracting. How can we use the savings for these upgrades to pay for the upfront capital of this project? And when we're talking about that, what does that process kind of look like? How do we select a performance contractor? What does that program even mean? We don't even know what an ESCO is. We were so far outside of this realm. We really needed some help. So Brian and his company came in and did a really fantastic job with that preliminary audit. Hey, let's look at all beyond your streetlights. Let's look at all of your other capital assets that you have to do maintenance on, and how can we look at what projects those are going to have and what kind of cost savings or anticipated cost savings we're going to get from those. And here are those recommendations. And then from there, we issued an RFQ. I can't remember how many responded. I want to say like 5, maybe 6 ESCO companies responded. And then from there, we narrowed it down to kind of a more intense audit, I guess. It's called an investment grade audit. Let's do a deep dive into all of our assets, particularly our facilities, but obviously our streetlights counted in that as well. And what is that scope of project and that payback period? Because we as a city borrowing money on public taxpayer dollars care about that payback period and the scope of those projects. So as Ryan mentioned a little bit earlier, depending on the audience, we had to change this conversation a number of times because while being environmentally friendly and good stewards of the environment is something that's important to some people, saving money is of more importance to others. So you can actually spend this a couple different ways if you're trying to pitch it. Green can mean a number of different things. And so depending on your audience, you can pitch it the sustainability green, or you can pitch it the money savings green. And it's nice when you can pitch it both ways, which is exactly what we did with this performance contract and with Ryan's help. We are being good stewards of our environment, but we're also being good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. So it was kind of a win-win in both of those scenarios, because we have members of our governing body who care about each of those very strongly. And so when pitching them both ways was something that was really important to us. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what we ended up doing, especially for the benefits of this performance contract, and I did just mention this, but those energy savings, they're guaranteed. So Ryan and his company come in and say, okay, I gave you this analysis of the improvements that we're going to make to your facilities, and over the term of your bonds, here's how much you're going to save and in operations and maintenance, and we are going to guarantee that. So we're going to partner with Ryan and his company for many years to come, just to make sure that we're managing that savings and making sure that we're meeting our goals that we set forth in this contract. Additionally, something is working with the utilities and making sure that those improvements with the utilities is something that's going to work out for your organization. Both of those first 2 bullets are like the money saving green portion of it, but then obviously we also care about the environmental portion of it. So the following bullet, decreasing the carbon footprint, something that's really important to us. Shawnee is a Soul Smart Bronze organization through Mark and the Department of Energy, and we also through the county are an R5 certified organization. So we do care about our green practices and how we implement those, and we really promote those through our community. But how can we promote those ourselves? Like I said, we did a lot of we put facility maintenance on the back burner for a long time. So how can we utilize those same programs that we're pushing out to the community on ourselves, and making sure that we're being green stewards and implementing green practices ourselves? And like I said, we did bond this up front. We don't just have money lying around to spend $5 million on projects. So we did bond it. But we wanted to make sure that whatever the duration of that bond, it ended up being 15 years. We want to make sure that everything, all of the upgrades that we're doing and the maintenance that we're saving for this project are going to be paid back with the duration of that bond. And ultimately, Ryan and his team came in and did a turnkey design. They came in from day one. I think they were probably a part of this initial conversation that we gave to the city council. Involved up to that point, and we're completed with construction. I believe we completed a number of months ago, and Ryan and his team, we still have bi-weekly meetings to discuss all of these guaranteed savings. So it's kind of a turnkey project from their kind of capacity. We don't have the capacity in-house. Some organizations have that kind of maintenance and management staff, that risk management staff, and we just don't have that here in Shawnee. We're a really lean organization. So having that outside kind of organization help us. And something that I didn't mention here, David Carter, who's on the call here, it was kind of that third party intermediary, like Ryan and his company, they do this for a reason. And Shawnee, we do this for a reason, but is there that third party that can come in and validate kind of both sides of this project? And we work as kind of a triad and a team to make sure that this is a successful project in the end. And we're meeting those energy savings and that guaranteed savings with the validation of that third party who has well, obviously they have an interest, not maybe a financial interest like the other two sides of the companies do. Next slide. So what we ended up doing here, if you want to get into the nitty gritty, I won't go too deep, but I will give you some examples of some projects that we did end up moving forward with. Because this is the initial presentation that we gave to our council, we didn't end up moving forward with all of these projects for a number of reasons, kind of outside the scope of the performance contract. Just our internal goals for our organization. But we did move forward with that streetlight purchase. So the city of Shawnee now owns all of their streetlights. We did upgrade all of those to LED, and we are saving a substantial amount, not only from the lease payment savings, but also the I guess the savings on operating LED bulbs from the alternative. We did not move forward with the city hall improvements. That's kind of a different conversation. We did improve many of the things at our civic center. This would probably be like a community center in some organizations. We updated the lighting, upgraded to LED, upgraded our plumbing, HVAC, and then our building envelope as well. Not that we didn't fix leaks in our building before, but like I said, there are a lot of things that could have been placed on the back burner. Hey, we'll get to it next year, or hey, we'll budget for that next year. And Ryan and his company came in and really made sure that holistic approach was looked at our facilities, not just upgrading those high ticket items, but also literally the building envelope, the windows, the doors, the sealants, the roofs, all of that stuff. So they did a great job there. Something that they also kind of brought to our attention, and while we knew it in the back of our minds, it really wasn't a high priority. We had a number of buildings that were operating solely on electric. One of our buildings didn't even have a gas line going to it. So 100% electric building. Another building had electric features, was operating solely electric, but had a gas line to it. Really long story. We don't really know why, but we fixed it, and we upgraded a number of our buildings to converted them to gas HVAC systems, and making sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck in that nature as well. Next slide. Like I said, our Civic Center and our Justice Center both were pretty much 100% electric. So we converted those to gas, saving a substantial amount of money on our end. And then upgrading, like I said, our HVAC systems in a number of our other buildings as well. LED, obviously across the board, that's pretty standard now. Like I said, when we go do building inspections for new builds, we make sure that that's a standard for us, LED, but it's not ever something that we did for ourselves before. So we wanted to make sure that we're practicing what we preach, I guess. Make sure that our buildings are as efficient and as manageable as we're making everybody else have their buildings be. And so part of this project was that as well. So we wanted to make sure that we had all of our buildings upgraded and managed to the appropriate level. And also, what are those operations and maintenances that we've been deferring? As Ryan said, we maybe didn't do the best job of taking care of ourselves. We wanted to make sure everything else was taken care of first. So this project really came in and did that. We could sell it by saying, hey, over 10, or it actually ended up being 15, over the next 15 years, we're going to pay back all of this upfront capital, but it's going to pay for itself over those next 15 years. So what does that look like for us? Next slide. So what we did, like I said, we purchased those streetlights. We did a condition assessment and we ended up upgrading those to LED. And then we went out for an RFQ, ended up selecting Ryan. Like I said, this is exactly the presentation that we gave to our governing body, kind of like as a first pitch, I guess I would say. But I hope that answered a lot of your questions, and I'd be happy to stand for questions and turn it back over to Ryan.
So I don't think I need to spend too much time on this one. This was just kind of a summary of what we did. The one thing that I don't think you mentioned, Caitlin, is we did put solar on one of their buildings. And it's kind of, I don't know, to me, it's kind of cool to turn the meter backwards on any building. And so their fire station 72, we actually have done that on a few months. We've actually spun the meter net backwards in a month. Most of it is it's right kind of at the edge. And so I think we're around 80, close to 90% saving, or kWh savings, electric savings on that building. So that's kind of cool too. Caitlin really wanted wind, but we couldn't make wind work.
I did. I was very excited if we could get a wind turbine up there, but it just wasn't going to work out.
Yeah. And so then just kind of wrapping up, again, dollar savings is important. I say current annual savings here because our goal is to continually improve, but we're sitting around $200,000. Now that does not include the purchase of the streetlights, which was, I guess, kind of part of this project. We were not, it wasn't, the purchase didn't go through us, but city negotiated directly with KCP&L. But I think they're sitting, what came up like $400,000 a year savings on that one as well.
Yeah.
So something somewhere, maybe even close to $500,000. But that savings at 2.5 million kWh savings is equivalent to all these things and environmental benefits. So again, it's kind of cool to show and share this kind of stuff with governing bodies and share the good that we're doing. So with that, I don't think I had anything else at least planned. So any questions from anybody?